Hello, I'm Jason Turvey of the Class Consciousness Project, and we're doing a very special football interview today. And it's quite apt because we're doing this recording on the day of the Manchester Derby, the game kicking off at 3:30 this afternoon between Manchester City and Manchester United. And with me, I've got my comrade Terry from the Class Consciousness Project. Terry is a Manchester United season ticket holder. Is it fair to say a long-suffering Manchester United fan, or is that too soon?
Recently long suffering, yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me, Terry. And I wanted to chat about Manchester United, um, both in the past and in the present. But I wanted to start off by talking about a former player of Manchester United who's played for Manchester United across two spells, and it's Paul Pogba. Now, Paul Pogba this week was banned by the Italian football authorities for 4 years for doping. He was found to have failed a test, an anti-doping test, after a game between, I believe it was Juventus and Udinese in August last year. He was failed. He failed a test for testosterone. He was then suspended the following month, and had been suspended all the way through to last week, where the Italian authorities, as I said, banned him for 4 years. Now he's 30, so that'll take him up to the age of 34. So it's not necessarily the end of his career, but it's certainly taken a big chunk out of the twilight years of his career. Now he's going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to appeal the decision. So it may be that the ban is commuted, or it may be shortened. But whatever the case, what are your reflections, Terry, as a Manchester United season ticket holder and someone who I'm sure has seen Paul Pogba playing the colours of Manchester United in the past? What are your thoughts on this news?
It did surprise me to be fair, but Pogba is a decent player. I mean, but before he came to United, he was at United previously,
Yeah.
and and for reasons of the back room or whatever, he didn't fit in. He was sent on his way and went to Juventus. Now he's played well for them. He's had medals for them and all that caper. And then when he came back to Old Trafford, he was the most miserable player. Week in, week out, I could see if he wasn't playing well or he didn't score a goal, he was miserable. A bit like Rashford's gone. Now, for him to go there and take drugs, I know there was something going wrong with. He was being investigated regarding some witchcraft stuff or something or other in Africa or whatever it was with him and his brother, something to do with a um, what was it, a ransom demand or something. We're going to release some photos if he didn't pay some money. I don't know. But I know that he said he whinged and cried when he was at Old Trafford and said he was depressed under Mourinho. So I don't know whether that he is suffering from depression, and it's a long-standing thing. Which, if he is, I feel sorry for him. But it shocked me because he was a world record transfer fee when he came to United.
He was, yeah.
89.3 million. Yeah. And I think someone's beat that in 21. You'd probably know. But anyway, no, I was shocked, to be honest, Jason, that he when I looked at it and seen that he'd been banned, I thought, bloody hell, you know, how the mighty they have fallen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was it? I mean, obviously he was at for his second spell, he was at Manchester United for 6 years, and he did have some moments. One memorable moment, of course, was the Manchester Derby, funny enough, when Manchester City were playing Manchester United at the Etihad, and were 2-0 up at half time, and then Pogba turned in a masterclass
Hmm.
to get Manchester United back into the match, a match that they subsequently won from 2-0 down.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
one
he
of
had
the
his
things that was
moments.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things though that as a non-Manchester United supporter would say was what was difficult to understand, and I don't know whether you've got any insights into this, was when you saw Pogba playing in the colours of France,
Hmm.
it was almost like he was a different player. Yet when he was in the colours of Manchester United, he was a shadow of that player that
Yeah.
played for France. Is there any, can you explain why that might have been? Did you see anything?
The only thing I can think about that is that when he played for France, he was given more freedom. It's different international football, isn't it, to your club? And I suppose he was treated more like a bit more of a god, where there was other gods at Old Trafford when he was there. So he wasn't like at the top of the tree. He had to do as he was told. I don't think him and Mourinho got on. And in fact, when they re-signed him, I don't think Mourinho had a say in that. I think he came back because Mourinho had started that year, I think, 2016. I think it was. And
Yeah, 2016,
yeah,
Mourinho
and
joined.
and
Yeah.
Pogba came back then, and I think it was them in the back room that wanted a big signing. I.e., the Glazers wanted a big signing, and this Paul Pogba's coming back, massive 89.3 million, and it's just all about advertising and sponsorship and all that with United. So,
Mm,
well, it is
mm.
now, and that's probably the reason that they got him. He he had a bad season. 2 seasons before he left, and they were coming off at half time. It was the year, I think I've mentioned it to you before. It was the year that one of the decent players that left was leaving, and he was walking around the pitch, and as he came to go down the tunnel, somebody in the fan came down and said, "Pogba, you've been shit all season. You're just an average player, mate. Um, don't think you're anything other than average." And that really, he just shrugged his shoulders. You saw him on camera. He shrugged his shoulders like, yes, I'm getting the money. And that turned a lot of people off him. They saw that footage.
Mm.
That's basically, I think, to not play every game, because in the end, Mourinho had enough of him and put him on the bench. And he just sulked and sulked and sulked. And of course, then in the dressing room, he doesn't like Mourinho. So he's likened to Balotelli at Liverpool. Somebody that would pout and sulk if you didn't get their own way. He seems exactly that mould. And that's what I think. Under Mourinho, he sort of went all miserable and started to poison them younger ones in the dressing room. Jess Lingard was one. He started to go off the rails. Mason Greenwood. Um, you know, the poison seeps through a club. It needed to be stamped out, and it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you believe that Pogba was a negative influence on that
Yeah,
generation of players?
I do. I do. At United, anyway.
Mm.
Maybe there was others where he went to Juventus who were more powerful than him and kept him in check. But he had no one at United to do it. Roy Keane wasn't there doing it. If he'd have been there when Keane was there, Keane had said to him, "Pack it in, lad. You know, you get on there and play, or you sit on the bench.
Yeah.
That one of them players.
Mm.
You got to have somebody
Yeah.
like that and enforce to keep these players in order, because they're like prima donnas these days,
Yeah,
aren't they?
absolutely. Yeah.
Falling over a blade of synthetic grass. Christ,
Well,
you fall
yes.
over. You fall over more in the playground when you was a child. Scrape all your knees, do a bit of a whinge, get up and carry on playing football.
Yeah,
Oh, these guys have
exactly.
got to be carried off on a freaking stretcher.
That is true. That is true. They don't make players like they used to. I
They
mean, one
certainly
one of the
don't.
reminders you get of that is, and I've got to give props to ITV for this, to giving us the big match revisited, because it tells us what football used to be like,
Oh
and
yes, yes.
uh,
And
much more fun,
a
much
goal
more
mouth with
fun.
4 inches of mud,
Yeah,
and the goalie's
exactly,
stranded because his boots are stuck in the mud. He can't get to the ball.
exactly. Penalty spots used to disappear in about February, didn't they?
Oh yeah, yeah,
They just end up swept away under all the mud and little
yeah.
bits of turf, what was left of the turf, and yeah,
There was
fantastic
nothing
days.
in the United goal mouth in the early 70s, and in every other match
Yeah,
ground, to be
yeah, that's
honest.
it. And of
By
course,
the
the other
time,
thing. So I was going to say the other thing is in the sort of January, February months of the season back in the 70s, the pitches used to turn a sort of yellowy colour when they had so much sand in it
yeah.
to try and help the drainage.
But
Um,
when they used to freeze over, and you'd say, because you don't see it now, obviously, because it's underfloor eating and all. But when it'd be froze over, you'd be freezing on the terraces, and then players would be running around like they were on an ice skating as Torval and Dean all over
yeah.
the ice trying to play football, and they never cancelled the matches. It'd have to be 6 foot in snow before a match was cancelled on a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, which we
Yeah,
should
yeah,
go
that's
back to,
right.
by the way.
Absolutely, yes, and it's something I've covered in my Death of the FA Cup article on the Class Consciousness Project website. The erosion of that Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff tradition has done that competition no favours at all.
Yeah.
And that's before we talk about when they moved the final to a 5:15 or 5:30 kickoff for something like
Ridiculous.
10 years, purely because the tea time slot gave them better advertising numbers. That was the whole reason why they
Yeah.
moved it. But then, of course, the police were concerned because you had people coming down into London, often coming from places like Manchester, Liverpool, and so on, coming to London, knowing they haven't got a kickoff till 5:30 in the evening, and going on the lash all day.
Yeah.
You know, albeit at London prices, but they went on the lash all day.
Mm.
And of course, the police said, "Well, this is no good. This is no good because we've got drunk people milling about in northwest London now."
Well, yeah. I mean,
So
and all day drinking as well. You see, because when it was 3 o'clock kickoffs, the pubs were shut at 3. So you'd come out of your match at 10 to 5, walk if you were local, walk to the pub, and they would be open then by 5:30, 5 to
yeah,
5:30. So
yeah,
you you were at the match, enjoying that, then coming home, go for a few pints when you got in. Whereas now it's just all day, so you can do what you say. And if you've got an 8 o'clock kickoff midweek, and they've gone down there and they've gone in the afternoon, they've got all afternoon and into the evening to
yeah,
spend
yeah. That's right.
for an FA Cup game, a 7:45 in London for somebody from Newcastle, say, and they've got to get home.
Yeah, yeah,
It's ridiculous.
yeah. Absolutely. Because if you look at the sort of places that cup final finalists would come from, it's often Manchester, Liverpool, the northeast, perhaps. They'll all come into London. They'll all hit King's Cross and the
Yep.
Euston areas of London. The whole area there's pubs everywhere, so that's where they'll go, and they'll be there well, the rest of the morning if there's any morning left, and then most of the afternoon, and then about 4 o'clock, 4:30 ish, they'll think about getting on the tube to go out to Wembley Park.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a nightmare for the police, and they were the ones that lobbied quite vociferously to get the kickoff moved. But I just wanted to go back to Paul Pogba before we move on to Manchester United
Yeah.
in general. 30 years old, now banned for 4 years,
Mm.
which means obviously his ban won't end until he's 34.
Mm.
Do you think this is the end for him?
So I wouldn't say it was to be 34 and have you to be 34 wouldn't be too old if you're a good player. But to have 4 years off playing competitive football and then to come back, that might be too much for him to
Yeah,
play at the top level.
yeah, yeah.
I
I
think.
I
I
think
think.
so. Yeah,
I mean,
it'd
if
be
he gets it
difficult.
rescinded, in maybe, but you even it's all right saying even if you train. I mean, like when Cantona was banned for the kung fu kick, and he came back, he'd trained, but he hadn't trained at a level of playing the game against opposition who were going to have a go. So it's not the same, is it? Just doing it. You can
No.
keep yourself fit. Obviously,
Yes.
you keep yourself fit in the gym and swimming and what have you. But the actual play time you need, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm reminded of when Brian Clough was in charge of Nottingham Forest, when Nottingham Forest had been promoted to what is was then the first division, and he actually banned his players from training between matches because back then it was a 46 match or 46 match league.
Yeah, something
Or
like
full,
that.
yeah. So you would be literally playing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday throughout the entire season, more or less. Especially if you throw in FA Cup, League Cup,
Mm.
and so on. So the last thing he wanted was for his players to be um, training in any way between matches. As far as he was concerned, the match itself was training enough. He
Training,
wanted them to rest between matches, not train. And he had a go at Frank Clark because he caught him jogging. He was in his red Adidas tracksuit having a bit of a jog, and apparently Brian Clough said, "If I catch you doing that again, I'll fine you." So it's the what I'm using that to show is the primacy of match fitness, isn't it? You there's no substitute for playing football to keep
no.
you fit. You can be in the gym and you can
Yeah.
play practice matches and stuff all you like, but it's actual top level match fitness that
Yeah,
you
so
only get from
it's
playing
the
football matches.
adrenaline as well.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah,
using adrenaline when you're in the gym. You might sweat and can use all, but when you're on that pitch, I can imagine you're hyped up. You don't want to make a
yeah,
mistake. You want to get the goal. You boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
and it's pounding all the
absolutely.
time.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
I think possibly it could be career ending for him, but we see.
We'll see. As I said, he's taken the case to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. He claims the penalty was harsh. My understanding is that there were only two levels of punishment. It was a 2-year ban or a 4-year ban, and the Italian football authorities believed that 4 years was sufficient. I mean, it is a bit strange, isn't it? I mean, well, I say strange. It puzzles me that a man of Pogba's physical condition, he's in the prime of his life, peak fitness. Why would he need to take testosterone to
No, I don't know. I
help him
saw that
along,
and
so to speak?
I
Especially
thought,
with
why?
all the health risks that go with that as well. I
Mm,
mean, history is replete with examples of people who've taken testosterone, especially in I call it professional wrestling, what used to be called the WWF.
yeah.
Lots of them taking testosterone and dying of heart attacks before they're 40.
Oh yeah.
Um, there's some real risks to taking testosterone, and
Well, there is, yeah, on
yeah,
that sport. My lad was a big fan of that when he was younger. Well, it was WWE then, SmackDown, and all his capers. So I've got quite a knowledge of that because I used to sit there and watch it with him. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? And buy him all the wrestlers and that sort of thing. So yeah, he used to look at him and I'd go, "Do you think this is real fighting?" He'd go, "Look, Dad, he's got blood on him." Oh, I said, "He's got a little bag in his things here, you know."
yeah, exactly,
So, but
exactly.
anyway, and
Exactly.
yeah,
No,
it's
my
entertainment.
my my knowledge of wrestling only extends so far as Kendo Nagasaki on
Absolutely.
ITV and Big Daddy and Giant A Stacks
Yeah.
and
Well,
Mick
before them, it
McManus
was
and them on showing the
Jackie
age now.
Pallo, Mick McManus, and Jackie
Yes.
Pallo,
Yeah,
and all that. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Paul Pogba. I mean, it is regrettable, isn't it? I mean, a man, very mercurial talent, I think it's fair to say. I don't think he ever at Man United fully painted his talents on the canvas he was given.
no,
But we saw him in the World Cup where France won the tournament, and he was the outstanding player of the tournament for me.
yeah,
And I can only hope that whatever happens with the appeal, it isn't the end of Paul Pogba because I still think he's got a lot to offer.
hmm,
A lot to offer.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll move on to Manchester United in general now because they're playing Manchester City today.
They are.
Having lost the corresponding fixture early in the season, I
Yeah, but
believe it was 3-0 to
three
Manchester
nil.
City.
But that doesn't tell you the tale. That match doesn't tell you the tale. I we sat in the stands and we watched that, and I looked at the third goal and I thought these aren't even out of second gear. These are not even trying, and they're walking through us. They could have scored 6 or 7, and I think they just gave up at 3 and thought, well,
Mm,
that'll do. We'll have a rest. And honestly, I do. I do believe that that mentality went through the City team. They thought this is easier than we thought it was going to be. It was shocking, shocking.
yeah, I remember watching the game myself,
I mean, the
and
Liverpool game
yeah,
was bad enough, 7-0, but to lose against your nearest rivals, which in the same city, and not even try. God Almighty.
yeah, yeah. It's the thing that struck me about that game earlier in the season. It wasn't that like I think most people would have expected Manchester City to go to Manchester United and get a result.
Yes,
I think what would have shocked people that watched the game is how straightforward it was for Manchester
yes,
City to get a result. It was not that they had to overcome, necessarily an inferior but organised and motivated team. It was very easy in the end, wasn't it, for Manchester City?
yeah, yeah. It was. It was shocking. It was just
Yeah.
one of them. You walked away from the game, shrugging your shoulders, saying, "Well, we knew we were going to get beat because we've got no bottle. There's no push."
Mm,
Like you see top teams, and even when United were winning, they find a way. Liverpool found a way yesterday in 99 minutes. I know they call it clock time, but it was called Fergie
yeah,
time
it is clock
in
time, by the way. It is clock time,
it
believe
is
me.
clock time. I agree. Never mind, Rick. but it is Klopp time. Let's keep the match going until Liverpool score.
Till
That's
Liverpool
what
win.
people
Yeah,
say.
that's it.
But they used to
Yeah.
say it about United. Fergie time.
Yes.
He's there with his fucking watch like this,
Yeah.
And they'd say, "Oh look, they've scored in extra time, Fergie time," and it's one of them. It's just, I suppose it's just bitterness in it, really, because I hated it yesterday to see him score that in the 99th minute, even though my lad's in the last man standing in his local pub, and it kept him in. So fair enough for a few £100. So
Yeah.
I'll let it go for that. But inside, I was gutted. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? One of
Absolutely.
them. It is
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
it's the same for all United fans and Liverpool fans. It's that's the way the rivalry.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, you could say that United were the second choice of Matt Busby because he played for Liverpool and City, and he wanted to get the manager's job at Liverpool, and they wouldn't give it him. So the United job was vacant. I think this was about after the war, 45 maybe, and and he went to
Yeah.
United
1945. Yeah.
and built the Busby Babes,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
so
as we were saying the other day when we chatted about this, there's a documentary on BT Sport called Too Good to Go Down, and it chronicles the period following Sir Matt Busby's retirement in 1969 to Manchester United's eventual relegation from the First Division. And I said then, and I still believe it now, that there's very strong similarities between that post Busby period and the post Ferguson period after Ferguson retired in
yeah,
2013. Now you are fortunate enough, if fortunate's the right word, to have been a, a Manchester United fan who saw both of those periods.
mm,
Were there, in your mind, was there similarities between those
yeah,
two post periods?
yeah. There definitely is. When you look at it, you don't see it at the time when you've got success with Ferguson, but when you actually look from him leaving, because bear in mind, my lad was only young, so I didn't start going to the match again till the season after Ferguson finished. So it was 2013-14 season. So my lad was 14 then, and I said I'll get him a season ticket for his birthday, which is in July, and 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 it was from then. So really, I've seen the bad times because I went in the 70s up to the time they got relegated, and then the season and 2 seasons after, and then they came back up. But then you meet somebody and you want to settle down, and then football becomes sort of second. And to go back after the United era, because me and Rick laughed at it. He said, "Oh, you've missed out on both bloody ones there. You saw them get relegated in the shit season. Then they started getting good. You didn't see them apart from TV, which is right. And then go now. And to be honest with you, this season is very poor. And the comparison between the two, I would say, is that in the season after Busby retired, he was always there. He's like a shadow looming. He's always there, isn't he? So everyone's looking back. This is the man that managed the first English team to win the European Cup. Who am I as Dave Sexton or even Ron Atkinson, whatever, or earlier than him, sorry. Wilf McGuinness. No wonder he lost his hair or had a nervous breakdown. And Busby came back, so he still couldn't stop tinkering. And the team wasn't the same. I saw Best Law and Charlton play, but they were in the twilight years. And then Dennis Law went to City. Best he went off to do some ridiculous thing in Ireland or wherever. He just went anywhere, Best. And Charlton went off, and I think he went into management then. Did he go to Preston or somewhere? Anyway,
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
so the team that had lost the forward line, and it's very similar to the United win the league. Ferguson retires with an aging team, in my opinion, that couldn't cut the mustard the following season when David Moyes came in. They were the same players, but they were obviously a season older. And I think some ways you think to yourself, and I know you shouldn't perhaps, but you think, does Fergie not want anyone to succeed? Does he not want anyone to beat his records? I mean, he looks fucking miserable when they get beat, so he must still have some passion in it. But you think sometimes with people, they don't want somebody to be better than him. And maybe Busby was like that as well. They seem very simple, both Scottish. Seem very similar characters. The only difference I'd say between the team now and the team in the 70s is the team in the 70s were up to the knees in mud and they fought harder than some of these gobshites do now.
Yeah.
Rashford walking around the pitch whinging because nobody passed him the ball. But you just got to keep making the runs and eventually someone might get the ball to you. Things like that. I don't know what they
Yeah.
do in training United, to be honest.
It does make you wonder. I mean, again, little plug for the Class Consciousness Project website. We've got an article on there about the decline, I suppose is the best way to put it, of Marcus Rashford.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your reflections on Marcus as a player and as a man lately?
He should have stuck to playing football and left kids' meals, school meals, and all that business alone. Although doing charity is very good, but it's took his mind away from. It's elevated to something that he's not. He's not the Pope. He's not something up there, but like he can do no wrong. He's just a football player. And okay, he's had a hard life, and his mum's fought hard to get him where he is, and when he came in and he was bouncing, he's a breath of fresh air. But when he's not playing well, he's the most miserable get on the pitch.
Mm.
He won't run back. People will say, even Keane, I think, Keane made a point, but I think he included Bruno Fernandes. And I saw a comment saying he's only included Bruno Fernandes because he doesn't want to be accused of bullying Marcus Rashford and singling him out. Because you can't say about that Bruno Fernandes doesn't try. He runs out everywhere, whereas Rashford will only stay in that space. He's getting to remind me of Berbatov when we had him playing. He'd never be in his own half until he changed ends. And then,
Yeah.
but he'd get you the goals.
Yeah,
And that's the
absolutely.
difference.
Yeah,
Haaland doesn't do a great deal for City, but he scores goals every match. And
that's
that's what
right.
he's paid for.
That's what he's paid to do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
He's got a couple of good players there, though, giving him the ball, hasn't he?
of
De
course.
Bruyne, so he's got the service. And I'm not comparing City with United because, to be honest, if it was a 0-0 draw today, I think it'd be a good result for United and Liverpool.
Yes, it would. Yeah. Yeah, it would. Um, so again, going back to what I was saying earlier on, there are similarities between the post Busby period and the post Fergie period. And you mentioned earlier on about how Roy Keane might have shook up someone like Paul Pogba and brought him into line rather than let him uh, create the angst inside the squad that you think he did. Is what do you think Manchester United have missed most? Is it missing Ferguson or missing someone like Roy Keane?
I'd say it was missing someone like Roy Keane because I think Ten Hag's quite a disciplinarian with what the way he treated Jadon Sancho. He put that tweet out, and Ten Hag says, "No, I'm not having it. That's it." And fair enough, he stood his ground. Whereas players in the past had tested the water, Ferguson wouldn't have stood for it. But other players have tested the water with David Moyes, weaker managers. You know, how can you, when Giggsy ran it for a bit, how can you discipline your own? You played with them, for Christ's sake. You can't come along. Same with Solskjaer. Too much sentimentality. Ferguson was fucking ruthless. And I think Ten Hag could be in the same mould as Ferguson if he stopped trying to hire half the fucking Netherlands to come and play for us.
Mm. Well, I think one of the challenges that Ten Hag has got is that he seems to be reverting back to picking up players from the Dutch league and from Ajax in particular,
Yes.
and that speaks to a problem above him at the director of football level, because it seems like there isn't a club anywhere now in the Premier League that doesn't have a director of football, and it's a trend that's going all the way across the Premier League, isn't it? You keep your management recruitment and your player recruitment separate. The example I always give was back in the day when Freddie Shepherd was in charge at Newcastle United. And when he was the owner, he would bring in a manager, he'd give them loads of money, they would spend it all on players, then things would turn a little bit wrong and they would be sacked, and then he'd get another manager in, give them loads of money, buy players, sack them, and so on and so on and so on.
Mm.
And one of the first clubs to separate the two, whatever you might think of them as a club, was Chelsea.
Mm.
Chelsea separated the player and the management recruitment streams, so they ran almost inconsequential to each other. So the manager would have no say in players that came in, and once managers were no longer needed, which was quite often at Chelsea, they would be sacked and replaced.
Mm.
But the player recruitment would continue apace regardless.
Mm.
But I think the problem, as I said, that Ten Hag has got is that he doesn't have a director of football above him that either knows
Yeah.
or is able to find these players that Fergie, who was essentially a director of football and a manager at the same time, the players that he was able to find. But do you think Ten Hag is a long-term option for Manchester United?
He's going to have to be, because I can't see anyone else that would come there from a big club. Why would you leave a Real Madrid or a Barcelona? Isn't the Barcelona guy who's just sacked? Where's Tuchel? Is he at Barcelona?
Uh, Tuchel's at
He's
Bayern
been,
Munich.
has he just
He's
been
leaving at the
sacked?
end of the season. Yeah,
Right.
he's
Okay.
leaving at the end of the
Now
season.
you
Yeah.
see, I don't know how he what people see in him as a manager. I've looked at him watching other. I thought, I don't know about him. When Ten Hag came, he was an unknown quantity. Give him the chance, but don't try and undermine him with someone from the back room, which is what I think Ferguson's maybe since he was ill has stepped back a little bit from pushing players, pushing managers, I should say, into situations, because we should never have signed Moyes, in my opinion. That we needed a big name after Ferguson, and he wasn't it. And I just, I think we went downhill from there. And until we got Mourinho, and I must admit, I do like Mourinho, but we still should have had Guardiola before. You hear all these rumours of Ferguson sitting in a hotel lounge room having a meal with Guardiola, and Guardiola took a year off or something, and he was out in New York, and you're thinking, hang on, Ferguson, Guardiola having a meal, are we going to, nothing happened. And then
Yeah.
he went to City.
Yeah.
So, but who knows? Klopp goes, Guardiola will go, and then maybe it's more equalised out. Now we haven't got clock time. We haven't got. We go back to Fergie time. But
Well, that's
yeah,
it. I mean, Fergie's term of office at Manchester United is the proof is that it doesn't take very much to unsettle the equilibrium, does it? You have
no,
a team like Man United managed by one man for as long as Sir Alex Ferguson had did it for, and by retiring it unsettled everything. Everything was thrown up into the air. And one of the things I think Fergie retiring showed, as I said earlier, he was the de facto director of football as well as the football manager. But he was also an ambassador for the club
yeah,
at the same time because he'd been there for as long as he had and had won as much as he had. Um, and when he left, it exposed some of the weaknesses, didn't it, at Manchester
mm.
United? That
Oh,
final
definitely,
season, yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier on. That final season, the Robin van Persie season of Man United, if you like, because I remember Fergie buying Van Persie from Arsenal. It 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 it, it, it sealed the the Premier League title for Manchester United, but in a way, at the same time, it did paper over some of the cracks that were
yeah,
appearing
it did,
at Manchester United in terms of the way the club was being run by the Glazers, but also a slightly aging squad that was on
mm.
the downward curve. And
That's
when
fair.
Fergie moved on, and to be fair, that was one of Fergie's great strengths. He was able to win things with Manchester United, even though they may not have been on paper the best team. Um, but it was that season and Moyes taking over that really exposed some of the weaknesses that Manchester United had. Would you agree with that?
Yes, totally. I definitely would agree with that. Moyes was like a rabbit in the headlights every week, and it was the same old excuse every week. And I'm fed up of hearing managers go on talking about injuries. Ferguson had the same he had more competitions because they were always doing in everything till the end. He had two teams, one team to go and play in the cup game if he needed, and the best team to concentrate on the league. and he could interchange. See, this is the difference with United now. We lose a player. Luke Shaw has gone off injured. Probably, well, I don't know whether he'd be back before the end of the season. He's missed. So then we have to go and move players around in the defence. And you think, well, why haven't we got a left back sitting there waiting just to slot in? And we don't.
Mm.
You take
Yeah.
You for all the moaning about Martial, and like say 50 million for a failed Frenchman. He scored some good goals, but he's another lazy, miserable player. But he played him out of position anyway, in my opinion. Rashford, I mean, you should be. I suppose you should do what the manager tells you. Look, you're going to have to play here this week because, but not every week. If your position is, I'm a forward, I should be the ball come to me. You know football, Jason. You look at Anthony. What does he tell you when he gets the ball on that sideline? You know what he's going to do, and so does the defence. He's going to put it back inside, so that the defender doesn't have to worry about his left-hand side. He's only got to worry about where the ball's going to go over here. And if humble fans in the stand who've got no degrees in football, sports science or anything, can see that, why don't the management? This is what I can't get with United. If you look at Liverpool, for example, the speed that they go forward, it's incredible. They're running. They are running with the ball, and the passing's accurate at United, but they're too slow. And other teams I've looked at now, Chelsea, they've gone slow. It just seems to be a trend. I don't know. City are definitely not slow, and United just seem to now rely on the counter attack. And if they can get that ball lumped over to Rashford, he might just have the goalie to beat, and that'll be a chance. But that's not the way at United
No.
that we're used to.
No, absolutely. And you know, sort of speaking of speed and pace, you mentioned earlier on Jadon Sancho and the way Ten Hag handled Jadon Sancho and all the furore that surrounded him. So what are your reflections? Because he's now on loan at Borussia Dortmund. What are your reflections on the Jadon Sancho transfer, the bringing him to Manchester United? Because it should have panned out a lot better than it did.
Yes, it should. I don't know what happened there, to be honest, because there's another one who says he was depressed. I know Manchester is depressing at times with the fucking rain and shit, but Jesus, they can't all be depressed because they come from hotter climes like Pogba or, you know, Sancho was a great. But I thought when we've got him, I thought, God, great. We've he's going to really do well, and he just didn't click. He's odd games, but it wasn't like Paul Scholes who'd come into a team and a nondescript guy who never even stayed and went for a pint with him after, or did just got changed and went home. To score some of the goals he did and control the midfield the way he did was like no one, we haven't got anyone. Bruno Fernandes is no Paul Scholes, or we just haven't got it.
Let's have a look at today's game. I mean, not specifically necessarily the ins and outs of today's game, but in comparing Manchester United to Manchester City, I know it's not necessarily the most joyful thing to do for a Manchester United supporter, but where using Manchester City as the benchmark, where are Man United right now, would you say?
They're a mile away. They're a mile away. I mean, that season that we came runners up to City after Fergie had gone, we were, I think, 19 points behind City in second place when they won that title. Now, it's all right coming second, but when you're 19 points behind the team that won it, that tells you that they're a damn sight better than you are. And you're going to come out next season and they're going to do the same to you. And they did. I think when Atkinson got sacked, was it 11? I know it was 11 points behind City. I can't think. I know looking at City's teams of old, we could have held our own. We've held them to draws when they've been destroying people. How he sets up today, to me, will show me what his intentions are, Ten Hag, for the rest of the season. Because if he goes out and puts a team out that's going to play like they played at home against City, we will get slaughtered. We will be. They won't hold back now because they want to win that title. They were cruising at the beginning of the season, but now Liverpool's 1 point ahead of them, even if they beat United. So that'll come down to the Liverpool City game, won't it?
Yeah.
And it'll be a toss-up. Whoever wins that's going to win the league, I would think. So if United was to do something and hold them back, I hope they don't do it by negative play, because we drew against Liverpool and it wasn't a good game. We did have actually chances that we could have scored from, but so did Liverpool when we played them, and that ended up in a draw. I mean, if United win, I would soon. It is awkward because I can't compare the two. If you put on the pitch, we haven't got anyone apart from Bruno can put a good ball for Kevin De Bruyne's so accurate with his passing, and Yave City have got wingers and a man that they don't do an Anthony and cut in. They're down on that wing. My thing is they'll go for the corner. They'll get corner after corner after corner until Haaland scores, and that's what happened. United are useless at defending set pieces. Well, corners anyway. And we've noticed that this season when we're watching it. I'm talking to my lad, and he's saying to me, I mean, I have to put up with sports analysis because he did a degree in sports science at university. So football was his speciality. So he's analysing the game as we're watching it. I watch the game to be entertained. I don't want to know whether this guy's fell into a false nine position. I don't even know what a false nine is, to be honest. I've had it explained to me. With my eyes, I said, Lou, I can barely see the other end of the pitch. So just, even with distance glasses on. So I can see the numbers on the back of the shirt, so I know who they are generally. So that's the way I just look at it for the entertainment. But they're going, look, he pulled his back in. He's going down. Go down there for the bits. Get this out. Shut up. Tell me what's the fucking game. But I don't know. I think City are going to win today.
Yeah, I suspect that they will. I mean, Man United are coming into the game in much better form than they had a few months ago. At the beginning of the season, it was looking pretty torrid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But they have played themselves into something resembling form.
Yeah, but as soon as we get a run, you go like. But I say you can't. Højlund gets injured, and he started to come on to scoring now. He's got his first goal, and then he went on to get others, and he's getting confidence. You know, the overhead kick against Everton, I think, and confidence is there with him and Garnacho. They're quick, they're young, they're the kind of the future that you want your team. Younger players who are quick, whilst other teams are starting to age, because it all goes through a transition. But with City and Liverpool to some extent, if they've got a player that's aging and they want to get shut, they've got an idea of a player that fits into their system. Like Guardiola and his team are sitting there going, right, he's getting injured in. We need another player now that's going to fit in to this system like he does, but better. You don't think Real Madrid let go of Casemiro because he was the greatest player they got. They found somebody else that had fit into his place who was 10 years younger, so they got rid of Casemiro and we got him. And he's a great player. Jesus Christ, I'd like him playing for us 15 years ago. What a player, even for his time of life. But I just hope they don't give up and get battered. If they give a game and they get beat 1-0, 2-1, whatever, then fine. I'm happy if they put a fight up. And if they win, fine. If they draw, fine. Well, but I suspect it'll be a defeat for United.
I suspect you're right. What are your thoughts on Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who has now got a 25% stake in the club? Do you think he's the man who can make changes at Manchester United?
I don't know if he's only got 25% and he wants to make decisions like he says he does about the ground. The ground's fallen to bits, to be honest. It hasn't been altered since it was improved from the old days. It's still on the same ground as it used to be. Whether he can do something that way, whether he's got any input, but the Glazers still have 75%, don't they? So, I mean, they've got to be advised by the managers. They don't know anything about British football. They're Americans. They're just there because it's for the advertising revenue. They want to sell shirts in America, United shirts, because they're big. Well, they're big all around the world. But I mean, you know, that's what their thing is about it. Jim Ratcliffe seems, I don't know enough about him, but in a way, I'm glad we didn't get the Sheikh, the Bahraini or Omani, whatever he was coming from. You know, the one who put the money. Because I'm inclined to agree with what we said when we were discussing it last time. It's all right, people saying, "Come on, buy our club with loads of money," but you know where you're going to end up. You're going to end up in that European Super. I still think it's coming, that European Super League. And it got held off, and we'd be in it, and that'll be the end of my time going to Old Trafford for that. I don't know whether Jim Radcliffe, really, do I know much about him other than what I've read. If he's having a go, then time will tell, won't it? But up to now, I don't see any great changes. All I know is they've kept the price of a pint of beer down in the scoreboard, and it's the cheapest pint of beer in the Premier League.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Great,
positive news. I mean, I mean, what you said earlier on about fans demanding people come into clubs with skips full of money, you know, what they call invest. Investing in players is not investing in players. It's spending money on players. You know, fans. I'm reminded again of the Netflix documentary Sunderland Till I Die, where one of the things that fans constantly said was, you've got to invest in the team. Well, they had someone in Ellis Short who was a billionaire who was investing in the team, and basically all Ellis Short was doing was writing checks for every loss that the club had made. So while the fans had Ellis Short buying players, the club couldn't run itself without losing money. And Ellis Short was bankrolling that. He was making up for those losses by just simply writing a check and paying whatever bill it was that needed to be paid. The club itself was not financially surviving without Ellis Short's support. And of course, when Ellis Short decided to pull the plug, so to speak, and decided to put the club up for sale, the team was eventually relegated because there was that stream of money coming into the club had been cut off. Players were not being purchased anymore. Players that they had were looking to leave. And then when they got relegated, they had players on their books on Premier League money, but without relegation clauses in their contracts. So they were earning thousands and thousands of pounds. Jack Rodwell is the case I'm thinking of, and I'm sure Sunderland fans watching this will know exactly what I'm talking about. So they had someone in the shape of Jack Rodwell who was being paid to do nothing at Sunderland, and then refusing to leave because, as far as he was concerned, he had a contract and he intended to honour it. You know, so I think it's a Premier League disease, isn't it? Fans making or fans being given to believe that the only thing that can bridge the gap between where they are and when they want to be is you know, some oil baron turning up with more money than he knows what to do with and throwing it at their club.
And as we've said, you can buy all the best players in the world, but that's fair enough. But then you fall foul of financial fair play and all this business. Now, City are up to their eyes in that. So that will come out in the fullness of time, I expect. I don't know when, because it's obviously a more complicated case than Everton's was. But we'll see. But that's what you get. It's all right saying, well, yeah, I'd come in. I've got 10 billion to put into Man United. We're going to build a new stadium. We're going to buy every top player in Europe. And great, but man, it's not. I want to see I want to see a young Rashford. I want to see young Mason Greenwood's coming through the youth and breaking through and becoming a great player. And if you did watch them in schoolboy football in years gone, you know, periods gone by before they became adults, then you got someone to look at. You know, you look at them now, and players just come in. They've got no allegiance to Man United apart from the wages. A lot of them. Once they've been there a bit, maybe the badge. But if you've gone through the youth, Man United's in your veins, isn't it? Look at all them Giggsy, Beckham, you know, that came through and sort of gave everything. The teams they were in. But then again, you go and Roy Keane, you buy him from somewhere, he comes in, he gives it all. But that's it. But I think Roy Keane would play like that for anyone, whoever he
Mm.
was playing for. Cantona the same.
Yeah, yeah,
They had some great
exactly.
players, and so have other teams. And
Yeah,
it
absolutely,
is a
absolutely.
malaise.
And well, you talk about players that have come through Manchester United's ranks. Remember players like Nicky Butt. Nicky Butt ended up leaving Manchester United.
He did.
Phil Neville. Phil Neville did as well. You know, um, I'm sure they were loyal to Manchester United
Yeah,
for as long as they were there. But the minute Manchester United no longer needed their services, they were just a hired hand like everyone else, weren't
that's
they?
right. Well, that's the way it is, isn't it? And that to me that's fair enough. If you know if you've got somebody better to play in that position, because that's what it is. You're there to win games. The manager's there to make that team win. Otherwise, he's going to get the sack these days. They don't hang on to him unless they're successful. I mean, if Ten Hag's going to win nothing this season, and we've got Liverpool in the next round of the FA Cup, so that's going to be a hard one. Um, whether we get through that is another matter. It's the FA Cup; anything can happen. But if he doesn't win that, we're going to go with no silverware this season again, and people will start talking about Ten Hag's ability. So things have to be ongoing, to keep that team going. That's why City is so successful, and Liverpool are to a degree. And I think I spoke with Rick about it. It is right. If City had not have been there, Liverpool would have won more titles. Definitely would have been up there more. Definitely would have been up there. And it's just unfortunate that when United were doing the best, nobody else could get a look in United and Arsenal. It was one of them. It's just two teams that just dominated. And that's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way it seems now. It seems it's City that dominates, and with Liverpool following on, and everyone else is just banging up for the minor places.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And I think it's I don't mean this to sound disparaging to teams at the lower end of the Premier League, but there is not a lot of quality in the Premier League these days, is there? It's not like it was. I can remember when the Premier League was founded over 30 years ago,
Mm.
and there was still a degree of strength in depth. There was one or two teams. I remember Swindon Town having an absolutely torrid time in their one and only season in the Premier League. I think they conceded over 100 goals as well in that season. But the the thing about the Premier League at the very early stages of it, when it was formed in 1992, was that all the clubs were awash with money all of a sudden. It didn't last for very long
No,
because the bigger clubs would always rise above the smaller ones. But for just a little while in the early 90s, uh, all the football clubs could battle on more or less equal terms for players. And
yeah,
that died away and it reverted back to type. So you had the big teams, the big clubs, sorry, with the money, the Manchester Uniteds and the Liverpools, and then the nouveau riche teams like Chelsea and Manchester City coming along to snaffle up all the players. But I think what's happened now, you've got, I think it's fair to say, maybe three or four really good teams in the Premier League, then another three or four okay teams or good teams, for want of a better word, and the rest are complete crap. They're total dreck.
yeah. Well,
And you know
yeah. Funny you
that's
should
that's
say that.
that's my personal view. I don't expect everyone to
My
necessarily agree with it, but I just think there's a dearth. I mean, you don't
Yeah, I
need
do agree. I do agree with
just
you.
to yeah, well, just to sort of nail the point about how poor it is at the bottom end of the Premier League. You don't even need to get a point a game all season to stay up. You can stay up with 36 points now in the Premier
Yeah,
League, which is a really small return for 38 matches, 36 points.
it is.
But it goes to show the how poor things are at the bottom end of the Premier League, you know.
Yeah, Yeah, it was what I was saying about Jose Mourinho. He'd won a couple of. He won the FA Community Shield, the FA Cup, the Europa Cup. He was second in the league. That's it. Second in the league, 19 points behind City. But when he was sacked, he was in sixth place, 19 points behind Liverpool, 11 points outside the Champions League places. Now, the gap, he's only in sixth. The gap between the sixth team and the top five teams, that space was incredible.
Yeah.
That it shouldn't be. And that's why this was happening, if you remember, when they formed the Premier League, because they were saying that, look, we've got all these good teams here who are, and these shit teams that we can get shut of, and we'll concentrate on these good teams. Now we've got these good teams, and the rest of them, and we'll have a Super League with Europe and all that.
Yeah.
But the way United are playing, I don't even think they get invited to go and play in it.
Well, if they were to, it would because of the strength of the Manchester United brand, not necessarily the strength of the team. I mean, you mentioned it earlier on a couple of times about how well marketed Manchester United are. I was in Singapore a little over 5 years ago. That'd be in 2018. So it was at the tail end of Jose Mourinho's time there. So they were struggling at the start of his final season, because I can remember Tottenham going there and getting a quite straightforward 3-0 win against them at Old Trafford. And yeah, in Singapore, you went into any sporting goods shop and there'd be a cardboard cutout of Marcus Rashford or someone there.
Yeah.
There was if you didn't know any better, you'd think the three biggest teams in Singapore were Manchester United, Liverpool, and Manchester City.
Yeah,
that's how well marketed Manchester United have been. Yeah.
When my son was in Moscow before the special military operation began, he was teaching. He said to me the first few weeks he was getting his bearings. He was walking down the road with one of the other teachers, and they went into a bar, and it was the Moscow Ultras. They were all skinheads, but it was the Man United supporters club pub. So they were in a Moscow Man United supporters club. He said they couldn't speak a word of English, but they knew all the songs.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
They couldn't speak to them in English, but they could sing the song. He said it was brilliant, and that's it. So it's everywhere you go. It is right. It's marketing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But
it is.
That's great for a club, but for the fans who don't see that part of it, they just want their team to play well and win.
Yeah,
or just play
absolutely.
well. For try. Even under Tommy Docherty, we had some players. We had some cloggers in them olden days. Big Jim Olton and all that caper. Jesus Christ. And they were up to their ankles in mud, I know. And to head in case balls is not an ideal thing when it's fucking soaking wet, as I remember from school. But I wonder sometimes how great a George Best would be with the modern pitches and the modern balls and all the modern training. Then again, would he have lasted 5 minutes if he didn't pack in the alcohol? Do you know what I mean? It's one of them,
that was the flip side. I mean, all the wages he would have earned. He was a player who found himself distracted, shall we say, by things outside
slightly.
the game. You do wonder how long he would have lasted in the professional game, because you're right that the 70s players were made of sterner stuff. They were stronger people, in my view, than people are now, in terms of the conditions they had to play the game in, the way they were treated by clubs as well. You could turn up for training on a Monday morning and be told we've sold you to Coventry. You better get in your car, go up there and talk to them about your wages and things like that. So players were treated quite poorly, I think.
Yeah, they didn't have agents then, did they?
No, that's right. But at the same time, it's the eye-watering riches that footballers can win for themselves these days. That makes me wonder whether George Best would have lasted too long.
That's it. I think that the alcohol would have still took over, because it still takes over with players now, doesn't it? It's just that the younger ones, they nurture them from an age, and I suppose you get like Sir Rashford spreading his wings and fucking off to Belfast for a bender with his mates, thinking he's out of sight. You're never out of sight when you're
no, of course you're not. You're Marcus Rashford.
Exactly. You're never out of sight. You can't hide yourself just because you've gone to Ireland. So
no.
I don't know
No,
what he was
exactly. I
thinking
mean,
about.
yeah. I mean,
And
there's
that's
hiding and
probably
there's
sick.
going to Belfast on a bender, isn't it? So,
Exactly.
there's literally thousands of Manchester United fans in Belfast.
Yeah, there is.
You
They come
know,
over every home game. They're on
exactly,
bloody coaches
exactly.
from the ferries and all that cave. So I don't know. I don't know what goes through the minds, but the thing is, um, he got bollocked for it, and Ten Hag didn't go on about it when he was asked by the press again and again. He just told them, "I
Mm.
told you, it's
It's been
done,
dealt with. Yeah,
sorted.
yeah,
Go, talk on,
absolutely.
talk about the game now."
Yeah,
But
absolutely
that's the
right.
press, isn't it?
Of course, of course. That's a far more juicy story for journalists than perhaps what Manchester United did or didn't do in their last league match.
Yeah,
They'll
exactly.
be all over it like a rash. Well, we're coming
Yeah.
to the end of our time, Terry. So
All
I'm
right,
going to
mate.
ask you one more question before we go, which is, and it's fair to say, I don't think Manchester United are a club in crisis. They're a club in transition, and it's
Hmm.
been a transition that's been going on for quite a long time. But they are still a club in transition. But if I gave you the power and ability to change anything at Manchester United today, what would you do?
Before this game, or generally, but for
Just
the whole
generally.
one thing. If it was possible to get rid of the Glazers, because I think they're a bad influence, I can't think of any players that I'd want to just that would cause a great improvement to the club. Don't want a new stadium. Just want to see decent football. Yeah, get rid of the Glazers, and if Ratcliffe needs to have 100% of the control, well then let him have it. Let's see how it goes from there, because it's been shit under them for
Mm,
10 years or more than
yeah.
10 years.
Well, it's been more than 10 years. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for joining me, Terry. I've really enjoyed that discussion. I think
You,
Man United's it is a fascinating club. I know it's not universally loved in this country, but they are a fascinating club. And thanks for joining me today, Terry.
thank you very much, Jason. Come on, United.